Story 1. We lived in a quiet cul-de-sac just outside of Spokane, Washington. Suburban, nothing special. Ranch-style houses, trimmed lawns, that sort of place. I was 16 back then, old enough to be left alone while my mom napped after work. She was 8 months pregnant with my sister, so she was exhausted all the time. I usually just stayed in the living room after school, headphones in, doing homework, or watching something with the volume low so she could sleep. It happened on a Friday. I remember that because I had a math quiz that day and I bombed it, which is probably the only reason I remember the date at all. Anyway, I was in the living room, sitting on the floor with my laptop, when I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. Now our hallway runs straight from the living room past the bedrooms. I didn't look directly, but I sensed someone walking from my mom's room across the hall to what was going to be the nursery, and I heard the creak in the floorboards. That part sticks with me, that heavy footstep sound, like someone walking slowly. I figured it was Mom getting up to set something in the nursery, maybe a box or baby clothes or something, but I glanced up anyway out of habit. That's when my chest tightened. I saw her. I saw my mom. She was cradling a baby in her arms, pink blanket, little legs dangling. She was smiling, just faintly, like she always does when she's zoned out and tired. She didn't look at me. She just walked slowly into the nursery and gently pushed the door shut behind her with her foot. The thing is, my mom was still pregnant, very pregnant, as in her stomach barely fit behind the kitchen counter earlier when she made tea. I'd seen her not 20 minutes ago. She hadn't gone down the hallway. She hadn't left the kitchen. I froze, completely. I didn't even call out. I think my body just locked up from how wrong it felt. I waited maybe 10 seconds, listening, barely breathing. I didn't hear anything from the nursery. No creak, no shifting, not even the door moving. I just kept hearing the hum of the fridge from the kitchen. Finally, I forced myself to stand up. I didn't want to. Every instinct in my body told me to stay put. But I had to know. Either I'd imagined it or something was seriously wrong. I took a few steps and leaned around the corner to look into the kitchen. My mom was there, still in her pajamas, hair up in a bun, still heavily pregnant. She looked up from her phone and gave me a weird look. "What?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. My throat felt dry. "I thought you were in the nursery," I said slowly. She frowned. "I've been here the whole time." I just stared at her. I must have looked pale or something, because she set her phone down and asked if I was okay. That's when it hit me. I didn't want her going down that hallway. I didn't want her checking anything. I didn't want to know what or who was in that nursery. So I said, "Yeah, I'm just tired. Gonna lie down." She nodded and didn't press. I walked straight past the hallway, didn't even glance at the nursery door. I went into my room, shut the door, and sat on my bed for maybe an hour, just staring at the wall. I thought about what I saw over and over again. Her shape, the way she moved, the pink blanket, the baby. We didn't even own a pink blanket. We hadn't bought anything colored yet. Mom wanted to be surprised. Eventually, I got up and put my ear to my door. Nothing. Not a sound. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking I'd hear the nursery door creak open. I kept picturing that thing, whatever it was, coming back down the hall, holding that same bundled-up baby. I never brought it up to my mom. Not then. Not even now. My sister was born healthy a few weeks later. No complications. But I couldn't look at her the same way for a long time. I know that sounds messed up, but I kept thinking about what I saw, about that thing cradling her before she even existed. The nursery door had been shut all that night. I checked the next day when I finally worked up the courage. The room looked exactly the same. No sign anyone had been in there. No pink blanket. Nothing. Story 2. I was staying with my buddy Chris in Grand Junction, Colorado, just for a few days to get out of my apartment in Denver and clear my head. Nothing dramatic had happened, just that sort of lingering stress that builds when you're cooped up too long in the same space. Chris lives in a ranch-style house with no neighbors within sight. It's quiet, out past the edge of town, and I figured a weekend out there might actually help me sleep. The weirdest thing about that day was how normal it was. We'd spent the morning tinkering with an old radio Chris had pulled from a pawn shop. He liked fixing up junk. At around noon, we wandered into the kitchen. I remember we were trying to figure out if we wanted sandwiches or just eat leftover chili. I was leaning against the counter, spoon in hand, halfway into convincing him chili was fine cold. Chris had just opened the fridge. Then we both heard this sound, like a dull pop, almost like a balloon bursting, but thicker, like it had come from right behind us. Chris jerked back. "What the hell?" he said, brushing at his chest. There was this smear of goo, bright orange, almost glowing, and thick, like syrup, right on the front of his t-shirt. At first we thought something had spilled or dripped from the ceiling, but we looked up and saw nothing. No cracks, no leaks. The ceiling was clean. He wiped some of it off with a paper towel. "It's warm," he said. "Smells chemical, maybe?" I leaned in. It had a kind of tang to it, almost like citrus, but there was a bitter chemical bite behind it. I instinctively stepped back. The spot on his shirt was spreading out a little, seeping in like motor oil. He peeled it off and threw it in the sink. We both just kind of stood there, frozen. That sound. It had been so close. I checked around the stove, thinking maybe something had popped from inside the oven, but the thing wasn't even on. We went through every cupboard, every drawer. Nothing that looked remotely like what had splattered on him. No food left out, no busted bottle, no squeezed toys, nothing. Chris grabbed a flashlight and opened up the crawl space panel under the sink, but even that was bone dry. There was no source. It was like the goo had come from thin air. I said, "Could it have come from outside? Maybe something flew in through the window?" But all the windows were shut. Even the screen door was locked. The place was sealed up. Then something hit me. There was no trail. It was just that one splatter, like something had targeted him. Nothing on the floor, not a drip on the counter, nothing else anywhere. Just a single orange blotch right in the center of his chest. Chris was quiet for a second, then half laughed. "Dude, interdimensional nut." I didn't laugh. Something about it, it didn't feel funny. I said, "That sound, did it sound close to you?" "Yeah, like right here," he said, pointing to the air between us. That's what had been bothering me. I felt it, not just heard it. You ever been near a subwoofer when it kicks? The kind of pressure you feel in your chest? It was like that, but quick. One pulse. We both started to get weird about it. Chris scrubbed his hands twice. I asked if he felt sick, and he said no, but he kept looking at the sink like something was going to crawl out of it. We joked around a little, because that's what you do when your brain's not making sense of something. But the whole time we were watching each other, like we were waiting for one of us to pass out or start bleeding from the eyes. We ended up dumping the shirt in a garbage bag and sealing it with duct tape. Neither of us said it, but we didn't want it in the house. I put it out in the shed. We didn't even want it in the trash can near the house. We cleaned everything. Wiped down the counter, the floor, the fridge handle, everything. The smell had already faded, but we kept scrubbing. After an hour or so, we sat on the back steps in the sun. Neither of us spoke much. There was this silence over everything. No birds, no wind, just stillness, like the world was holding its breath. Later that night, I kept thinking about the sound again. I played it back in my head, over and over. That one thick pop, like something tearing through, but only for a second. No echo, no follow-up noise. Just in, then out. Chris didn't sleep. I heard him pacing around at 3 a.m. He texted me from the hallway. "Still feel weird, not sick, just off." I got up and we sat in the kitchen. We didn't talk about what happened. We didn't even mention it. I think we were both afraid that acknowledging it again might make it real. The next morning, we checked the shirt again. It had hardened. The orange stuff had gone chalky, like dried clay. No smell left. I thought about sending it somewhere, like a lab. But where do you send something like that? What would I even write? Unknown goo appeared on human after audible anomaly in sealed kitchen. We burned it, behind the shed. Chris didn't say anything, just handed me the lighter. Neither of us ever figured it out. We even asked a couple friends if they'd ever seen something like it. Got jokes about ghost jizz and alien pollen, but nothing real. Nobody believed it. Hell, I wouldn't have believed it if I wasn't there. But here's the part that really gets me. A couple weeks later, Chris called. He sounded off. Quiet. "You still remember that orange crap?" he asked. "Of course," I said. "Why?" There was a pause. Then he said, "I found a spot of it on the garage ceiling. Just one. Perfect circle." I asked if he was sure, and he said yeah. Same color, same smell. Hardened this time. No idea how long it'd been there. I asked him if he touched it. "No," he said, "not this time." We never talked about it again after that. Story 3. I grew up in a small neighborhood on the edge of Binghamton, New York. Dead-end streets, dense trees past the backyard fences, and houses just far enough apart to feel a little too quiet after sundown. My twin brother Josh and I shared a room at the end of the upstairs hallway. This happened when we were 9. I've tried to write it off 100 different ways, but nothing sticks. It was one of those evenings where the sky dims fast and the air feels heavy, like a storm might come but never does. I remember I was sitting on the carpet in the living room, half watching a rerun of Rescue 911. My mom was in the kitchen washing something. Josh had gone upstairs a while ago to read. He liked reading in our room with the window cracked, even if it was cold. I don't know how else to explain what came over me. It wasn't a sound or a thought. It was this stabbing sense that something was wrong. Not like a noise upstairs or anything rational like that. Just this horrible tightening in my chest. I got up, left the TV blaring, and went to the stairs without saying anything. By the time I reached the top step, I had goosebumps all down my arms. The hallway light was off, which was weird. We usually kept it on until bed. I walked slowly down the hallway, and when I reached the door to our room, I heard it. A voice. Low, flat, almost robotic. "I have to leave now." That's it. Just that one sentence. Like someone was saying goodbye. I didn't even have time to knock. The door swung open fast, like Josh had yanked it. He looked pale, wide-eyed. "Someone was outside the window," he said immediately. "I swear to God, I didn't see them, but they were talking to me." I froze. "What? What did they say?" I asked. He looked right at me. "They said, 'I have to leave now,' just before you came in." I didn't know what to say. I walked past him and looked at the window. It was open about 6 inches. The screen was still in place, but something looked wrong. The way the curtain was bunched, like it had been grabbed. I looked out. Our room faced the backyard. Dark trees, no light at all, except for the back porch lamp on the neighbor's house 2 lots over. "You didn't see anybody?" I asked. "No," he said, "but I felt them, like they were staring. I didn't hear them come up. Just suddenly they were there." My mouth was dry. Did it sound like a man or... I don't know. It was like, not a voice, more like it was being played back from a tape recorder. Too flat, like it wasn't meant to be a voice at all. We went straight to our mom. She took it seriously at first, grabbed a flashlight and went out to check the yard. Nothing. No footprints. No signs of anyone. The ground was muddy from rain the day before, but the dirt below our window was untouched. Even the grass was undisturbed. She said maybe it was the TV. Maybe we both heard something from downstairs and imagined the rest. But Josh hadn't been downstairs, and the voice didn't sound like anything that would have been on Rescue 911. We knew what we heard, and it wasn't from inside the house. After that night, I started thinking it was a dream. We were kids, we had active imaginations. Maybe we scared each other. We didn't talk about it much growing up. But 2 years ago, out of nowhere, Josh and I were catching up over a beer at a friend's wedding, and he leans in and says, "Hey, remember that time when we were kids and someone was talking to me through the bedroom window? Remember how he left right when you came in the room? What the hell was that?" I just stared at him. "You remember that?" I said. "Of course I remember. I was wide awake. I was reading Goosebumps, and then I felt like someone was staring. That voice, I'll never forget it." He described it again. The tone, the sentence, the same exact wording. "I have to leave now." He even remembered me opening the door and standing there frozen, like I couldn't move. We sat there in silence for a bit after that. I asked if he thought it was someone messing with us, but he shook his head. If someone had been outside that window, he said, They'd have had to be standing on the flower bed box. It wasn't strong enough to hold a person, and Mom checked it. No prints, no damage. And the voice, he added, I've never heard anything like that since. It didn't sound alive. You know what I mean? Like it was playing at being human. He meant it. I could see it in his face. The worst part is, I think whoever, whatever, was out there wasn't talking to him. I think it was waiting for me. And when I came down the hall, it left. It never came back. Nothing ever happened again. No weird dreams, no sounds in the night. Just that one moment carved into both of our memories. But sometimes I still think about how I felt right before I went upstairs. That awful sense of being pulled, like something wanted me there, not to witness it, to stop it, or maybe to replace him. And that voice, monotone, distant, wrong, saying I have to leave now like it had somewhere else to be. I don't think it was talking to him. I think it was talking to something else, and I interrupted. I don't care if there's no evidence. I don't care that the screen was intact or that the dirt was untouched. We both heard it. We both felt it. You can write it off as sleep deprivation or childhood imagination. People do that all the time with things they can't explain. But I know what I heard. Story 4. I was 22, living in a crumbling little town outside of Billings, Montana, and working the overnight shift at KRDV 790 AM. You probably don't know the place. It was one of those stations where we played classic country and did farm reports at dawn. I was the board operator, pushing buttons and lining up reels for whoever was on air. This happened in the fall of '96. I remember because it had just started frosting over at night, and my car door would stick shut in the morning. We were out in the middle of nowhere. The station building sat alone at the end of a long gravel driveway, surrounded by empty wheat fields. Nothing around for miles, just one blinking red radio tower and a squat little building with humming equipment and flickering fluorescent lights. It was sometime after 3 a.m. I know because I had just logged the national weather update and poured myself another cup of that burnt gas station coffee we kept in the break room. The air in the station always felt stale and still, like the whole building was holding its breath. You spend enough nights alone in a place like that, you start hearing things. Soft creaks, distant hums you swear weren't there a second ago. That night, I was the only one there, or at least I thought I was. I was sitting in the control booth, half doodling on a notepad, half listening to Conway Twitty drone on through the speakers, when I caught headlights out of the corner of my eye. Bright white headlights coming down the long driveway, clear as day, cutting through the dark from the main road all the way up to the lot. I stood up and stepped to the side window, watching as the car pulled up slowly. A silver sedan. Couldn't make out the maker model, maybe a Chevy. Looked kind of old but clean. The headlights stayed on as it eased into the gravel lot and came to a stop just outside. We didn't get visitors that late. Ever. I waited a few seconds, peering through the glass. No one got out, nothing moved. Just the glow of the headlights through the foggy air. They sat there maybe 20 feet from the side door. My first thought was maybe a farmer had broken down or someone had gotten lost. People sometimes wandered in if they saw the tower lights and figured someone might be there. I went to the front door and pushed it open. Cold air rushed in. The lot was empty. I stepped out onto the concrete step and looked around. Nothing. No headlights, no car, just tire tracks in the gravel leading in, like someone had definitely pulled up. But they ended abruptly halfway across the lot. They didn't turn around. They didn't back up. They just stopped. There was no sound, no crunch of tires, no engine. I stood there squinting into the night, convinced I must have missed it. I walked out across the lot looking for taillights or movement, but there was nothing. The gravel didn't even look disturbed past a certain point, like the car had vanished right there. I turned around and walked back to the door, a little freaked out but trying not to lose it. I figured maybe I was tired. Maybe I'd imagined it. That's when Tom, the overnight announcer, opened the studio door and leaned out into the hall. He was usually quiet, kept to himself. Beard down to his chest, smoked too much. He just stared at me and said, "Hey, where'd that car go?" I froze. "You saw it too?" I asked. He nodded slowly, blinking behind his thick glasses. "Just disappeared," he said, rubbing his eyes like he wasn't sure they were working right. I was walking out to grab a smoke, looked right at it. Silver, right? Then it was gone. He didn't say anything else, just lit his cigarette with a shaky hand and walked back into the studio. I stood in the hall for a long time, trying to piece it together. The rest of the night dragged. Neither of us brought it up again. But I swear, what I saw was real. There was no exit route, no trees, no place to hide. That car came down the drive, stopped outside, and vanished into nothing. I checked the security footage the next morning before heading home. The cameras were grainy as hell, old tapes that rewrote over themselves every few days, but I ran through it anyway. Just static. Around 3:10 a.m., the screen flickered, went black for 5 seconds, then came back on, showing the empty lot. That was it. No headlights, no car, just a blip like someone had yanked the feed for a moment. I didn't tell anyone else. Management didn't care, and no one would believe us anyway. But I know what I saw. I never worked another overnight after that, transferred to daytime, and started sleeping with the blinds shut tight. I still drive past the station sometimes, and I swear I get chills every time I see that gravel lot. There's no way the car should have disappeared like that. No way two people saw it at the same time, and it just blinked out of existence, but it did. And whatever that was, it wasn't supposed to be there. Story 5, I lived in a cramped basement apartment in Maryland back in 2018. Nothing fancy. One window at ceiling level, always covered, and one exit. A thick wooden door that led to creaky stairs and out into the backyard. The neighborhood was quiet enough, but the basement always felt sealed off, not cozy, just separate. Like I wasn't really connected to the house above me or the world around it. It was around 2 a.m. when it happened. I'd been working from home on a freelance gig, just basic data entry stuff. My desk sat right next to the basement door. It wasn't fully closed, just cracked open a bit, enough that I could glance out into the stairwell if I turned my head. I remember being laser focused on my screen. The only sound was the soft hum of my PC fan. I wasn't tired. I hadn't been drinking. I wasn't on anything, just caffeine and leftover pizza. Then something shifted. Not a sound, just a pressure change, like the air got heavier. I blinked and tried to shake it off, but when I tried to turn my head toward the door, I couldn't. It wasn't fear, at least not yet. It was like my neck muscles had just stopped obeying me. I could see the edge of the open door in my peripheral vision. That was it. I told myself it was a pinched nerve, or maybe I'd zoned out too hard and my body hadn't caught up. That happens, right? Then I saw movement. A shape came into view at the edge of the doorframe. Black suit, then another, then another. 5 men, all identical black suits, crisp white shirts and dark ties. They moved slowly but deliberately up the steps. No noise. Not even the stairs creaked. They didn't speak, didn't look around. They were heading straight for my door, my cracked open door, and I couldn't move. I couldn't look directly at them, couldn't even lift my arms. My heart was hammering, but my body was locked, frozen like I was stuck inside myself. One of them reached out. He pushed the door fully open with the flat of his palm. It swung wide with a dull thud, and just like that, I could move again. I jerked my head to look straight at them, but they were gone. No footsteps retreating, no rustle of fabric, no sound at all. But the door was wide open. I sat there completely still, just listening, my ears straining for anything. Breathing, footsteps, a voice, anything. Nothing. I finally stood up and approached the door. Slowly, I looked up the stairs. Empty. I even walked up to the backyard. There was no one. The back gate was still bolted shut from the inside. No tire marks in the gravel. No footprints in the soft dirt. Nothing. I stood there for a long time, just staring at the empty yard. The moonlight made everything look washed out and cold. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Just sat back down at my desk, staring at that door like it might swing open again. In the morning, I tried to make sense of it. Sleep paralysis, maybe? But I wasn't in bed. I was awake. at my desk, fully conscious. And I've had sleep paralysis before. It doesn't feel like that. You don't see people walking toward you in full daylight clarity. I didn't tell anyone for a few days. Then I finally mentioned it to a coworker I trusted. She looked at me for a long time and said, "You know, people have said stuff like that before, right? About men in black suits showing up. It's always weirdly silent. You can't move, then they vanish." I laughed it off, but she didn't. She just stared at me and said, "Just be careful what you look into." I hadn't been looking into anything. No aliens, no conspiracies, just spreadsheets and invoices. I wish there was more to tell you. I wish there had been a sound, a clue, something I could prove or explain. But it was just that one moment. They walked toward me. I couldn't move. They opened the door, and they were gone. But that door, I'd never leave it cracked open anymore. I don't care if it's the middle of the day. It stays shut, locked. Whatever happened that night, I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't hallucinating. I was awake. I know what I saw. Story 6. I'm not the type to believe in anything paranormal. I fix vending machines for a living and live just outside Scranton, Pennsylvania. If something's broken, I find the mechanical reason. That's how I've always operated. But what happened that night in our living room is the one thing I've never been able to explain without sounding like a lunatic. It was a Thursday in early March. My wife Kelly and I had just finished dinner. Nothing special. Frozen lasagna, glass of wine each. And we were curled up on the couch watching reruns of Frasier. I remember that because the laugh track had just kicked in when it happened. We've got one of those old Nintendo Wiis. We don't really use it anymore. It just sits under the TV on the media stand, hooked up and gathering dust. The sensor bar is long, skinny, black, and it sits across the front edge of the TV stand like it always has. The cable from it just drapes loosely behind the TV in a kind of tangled mess. We never cared enough to tidy it up. That thing hadn't moved in probably 2 years. Kelly was leaned up against me with a blanket over both of us, and I had my arm around her shoulders. The dog Murphy was sprawled out by our feet snoring. Kat was passed out in the guest room down the hall, where she always sleeps. Then, without warning, no noise, no creak, nothing. The Wii sensor bar flew. I mean flew. It launched off the stand, ripped sideways across the room like it had been yanked by something invisible. It hit the end of the cord mid-air, snapped back slightly, and dropped to the floor with a loud plastic smack. Kelly jumped so hard she clawed my arm. Murphy shot upright and started barking like someone had kicked in the door. We both just sat there, frozen, staring at the spot where it used to be. I don't know how to describe it. It didn't slide, it didn't fall. It was thrown, like someone grabbed it and flung it as hard as they could, straight sideways. Kelly whispered, "What the hell was that?" I didn't say anything. I got up and walked over to it, heart pounding in my chest, and picked the bar up off the floor. The cord had stretched tight behind the TV, which was weird in itself. It meant it had to have moved fast and far enough to pull the slack taut. The bar wasn't warm, wasn't sparking, wasn't damaged. I looked back at the stand. There was a birthday card lying face down where the sensor had been. One of those paper cards you get from Walgreens. Kelly's birthday had been a week before. We'd had a few of them lined up on the top of the TV for decoration. Maybe, I thought, one of them fell, somehow caught the cord on the way down and yanked the bar off the edge. Seemed far-fetched, but it was all I had. I put the sensor back where it had been. Then I picked up the card and tried dropping it over the back of the TV, hoping maybe it had snagged the cord on the way down. It didn't. Tried again, angling it. Nothing. I tried flicking it harder, tossing it even. Not even a twitch. The sensor bar didn't budge. 10 minutes I spent doing that while Kelly watched, wrapped in the blanket, not saying a word. Eventually I gave up. Just sat back down and said, "Maybe the cord got snagged somehow." Kelly stared at the TV and said, "By what?" And that's the thing. I had no answer. We checked the windows. All shut, no wind, no vibrations. Nothing had fallen or moved on the shelf. Nothing was even out of place. The whole room was still, like the air had gone stiff. I don't know how long we sat there, just listening. Murphy had stopped barking, but was still pacing, tail down, ears back. He kept looking toward the hallway like someone was standing just out of sight. Kelly whispered, I want to go to bed." We turned the TV off, locked the doors again, and went to bed without saying much else. I didn't sleep well that night. Every tiny creak in the house made me hold my breath. I kept thinking, what did I actually see? Because I swear on everything, I saw it fly. Not tip, not slide. It was like something grabbed it and chucked it sideways hard. Next day, I inspected everything again. Cord was intact, no chew marks, no damage. I checked the TV stand, the wall behind it, everything. No signs of anything disturbed. The card hadn't fallen again. Nothing moved. It's like the whole room reset itself. I didn't tell anyone at work. How could I? What would I even say? Weeks went by and nothing else happened. We still live in the same place. Still have the we. I even left the sensor bar right where it was before, and it's never moved since. But here's the part that still gets under my skin. A few days after, Kelly told me, quietly like she was embarrassed, "When it flew, I felt cold, like something had just passed behind me." I didn't know what to say, because thinking back, I remembered the same thing. That split second before it happened, like the room went dead quiet, like pressure dropped, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up just before the bar launched. And the moment it hit the floor, that feeling vanished, like whatever was in the room had just left. I don't have an explanation. I don't even have a good theory, but something, just once, was in our living room that night, and it made itself known, with just one single unprovoked act, and then it never came back. Not that we know of, but sometimes when the house is quiet and we're on the couch, I still find myself glancing at that sensor bar, just in case. Because if it moves again, I don't think I'll be sticking around to see what happens next. Story 7. I live just outside Chattanooga, Tennessee. Grew up here, still here. This happened when I was 19, and my best friend Sarah was 20. We're almost 40 now, and we still talk about it sometimes, but never for long, because neither of us has an explanation. And I think we're both a little scared of what it might have really been. It was a Tuesday early fall, still warm but not hot, and the sun had just dipped low enough to throw everything into that weird bluish light right before it turns fully dark. Not night, not day. That in-between zone that always makes me feel a little off. You know what I mean? We were coming back from visiting her boyfriend at the time. He worked evenings at a hardware store off Highway 153. If you're from around here, you know the road. 6 lanes, always busy, lots of fast food joints and strip malls lining both sides, and one of those low concrete medians separating northbound from southbound. I was driving my old Honda Accord, baby seat in the back with my daughter, only 3 months old then. She'd been fussy the whole ride, wailing. We weren't even talking, just driving, music low. I remember thinking about dinner. Then I saw him. He was standing in the median, off-center from the nearest crosswalk. Not at a corner, not where anyone would normally wait. Just there, standing stiff. And I mean stiff like a statue. Not looking at traffic, not looking at anything. I only noticed him for maybe a second before every part of my body reacted at once. My foot slammed the brake hard. I didn't even think, just reacted. Sarah screamed. She saw him too. He had stepped straight into the lane in front of us, directly into my path. There was a car in the middle lane beside me. No room to swerve. I thought we were going to hit him. No, I was sure of it. But we didn't. We went through him. I mean that exactly how it sounds. We didn't miss him. He didn't dodge. There was no impact. But I saw him. Sarah saw him. We both screamed. I remember throwing my arms up even though I was driving, instinctively bracing for the hit. And as we passed, this is the part that's burned into me forever, I saw a flash of white across the windshield, like cloth, like something fluttering against the glass, right at eye level. But there was no sound, no thud, nothing. I brought the car to a screeching stop right there in the fast lane. Horns behind us, people yelling, didn't matter. Sarah and I both whipped around at the same time, looking out the rear window trying to spot where he'd gone. But he wasn't there. There was no one in the road, no one on the median, no one running away. He was just gone. Now you might think maybe it was a trick of the light, a reflection, Some guy in the crosswalk and we panicked. But here's the thing. My baby, she'd been screaming bloody murder the whole drive. And the second the brakes hit and we screamed, she went dead silent. Not crying, not babbling. Silent, like someone flipped a switch inside her. She stayed that way for a solid 2 minutes. Eyes wide open, not blinking. That silence was worse than the man. I kept saying, "Did we hit him? Where did he go?" And Sarah, pale as a sheet, just kept shaking her head. "Number, we went through him. I saw his robe," she said. He was wearing a white robe, like hospital white or funeral white. Neither of us could describe his face. That still gets me. We both saw him, full on, close enough to hit. But his face, it's like it wasn't there. We turned the car around, drove back slowly, eyes peeled, checked the sidewalk, the median, the parking lots. Nothing. There was nowhere he could have gone that fast. No alleyways, just concrete and storefronts. He vanished. We sat in the parking lot of a Rite Aid afterward, not speaking. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't hold the key to restart the engine. Finally, Sarah said, "You saw the white cloth, right? Across the windshield." I nodded, like it brushed over it, like he was hitting it but didn't. She whispered, "That wasn't a person. People don't do that." The worst part, we felt watched after, like he wasn't gone, just not visible anymore. I didn't tell anyone for years, not even my husband. Who's going to believe that? "Oh, hey, I drove through a ghost or a hallucination or something that looked like a man but had no face and vanished into thin air." Right, but Sarah saw it too. We remember the same details. His robe, how out of place he looked, how he stepped out without hesitation, like he wanted to get hit or knew he couldn't be. That feeling, I'll never shake it, like he wanted us to see him. To this day, I don't drive in the left lane on that stretch of road. And my daughter? She's 15 now, perfectly normal kid. But when she was little, she'd sometimes stare out the car window on that road and say, "That man's still waiting," always in that same spot. I never asked her what she meant. I don't want to know. We only saw him once, but once was enough. Story 8. I never liked working late, but that's how it went during high school. Last shift at Taco Bell, walk home around midnight. The town was quiet by then, most houses dark, the only noise the hum of far-off traffic and the occasional bark of a dog. I didn't have a car, and back then I was too stubborn to ask my parents for a ride, so I always walked the 2 miles. It was usually peaceful, but that night, I don't know. Something was off from the second I stepped out the back of the restaurant. I don't scare easy. I mean, I've done that walk dozens of times, earbuds in, hoodie up, head down. But this time I didn't play music. I kept feeling like someone was behind me. Not footsteps, I didn't hear anything, but like something was pacing me. I stopped twice and turned around fast, hoping to catch whatever it was off guard. Nothing. Empty street, barely any wind. Still, I kept speeding up without meaning to. By the time I made it to my parents' place, I was sweating. We lived in this split-level house on a quiet street near the edge of town. You know the type, short front yard, porch light always burned out, half the basement tucked into the hill behind it. I remember standing there at the front door, key in hand, just staring into the dark behind me. I didn't see anything, but I felt watched. That's not poetic. I mean, I literally felt like something was out there waiting for me to turn my back. Inside, everything was quiet. Parents were asleep. Little brother's toys were scattered around the upstairs living room as usual. I clicked the entryway light on to glance downstairs, just making sure nothing was on the floor that I'd trip over. Cleared, clicked it off. I had my backpack on one shoulder and started heading down to my room in the basement. That's when I saw it. No buildup, no weird sounds, just eyes, red ones. In the small basement window above the laundry room, something was staring in. 2 glowing red eyes, not reflecting, not shining from the porch light, glowing, like faint coals. I stopped on the 4th step. My hand went to the railing and just clamped there. I couldn't move, I couldn't blink. I didn't see a face or a shape, just the outline of a head and those eyes. Whatever it was had to be huge to be standing level with that window. That window was 5 feet off the ground and the backyard sloped down even more. I couldn't make sense of it. 7 feet tall at least, just standing there, watching me. I swear I forgot how to breathe. I don't remember turning or running. 1 second I was staring at it. The next I was in my room at the bottom of the stairs. Door shut, lights off, under the covers like a little kid. My heart was slamming in my chest. I was whispering to myself, "Nope, nope, you didn't see that. It's nothing. You're just tired. You imagined it." Then I heard it. The back porch door opened. It didn't slam or creak. It opened carefully, quiet. The porch connected to the laundry room, and the inside door was maybe 10 feet from where I lay. Then our dog, Cooper, who slept in his kennel just inside the laundry door, lost his damn mind. Barking, growling, whining. He wasn't a brave dog. He only acted like that when someone got too close to the house. I sat up, frozen. I thought I heard something moving, slow steps on the porch boards, the kind of noise that only makes sense if someone's trying not to be heard. Then the door shut again. No rush, no panic, just shut, like someone was done. I didn't sleep. I didn't even get out of bed to check. I couldn't. I waited until morning when I could hear my parents moving around upstairs. When I finally came out, the dog was hiding under a blanket in the corner of his crate, shaking. I opened the back door and checked the porch. The outer door was unlocked. No one had been out there. No footprints, no signs of an animal, just silence and sunlight. My dad said maybe a raccoon or something spooked the dog. I didn't argue. I knew what I saw. I've never seen it again. Never had anything like that happen since. But I won't go in that basement alone at night. I don't care how long it's been. And I always lock that back door. Twice. Story 9. I grew up in Neenah, Wisconsin. Just your average small town surrounded by farmland and quiet woods. Nothing really ever happened there. That's probably why my friends and I were always chasing weird shit. We weren't ghost hunters or anything. Just bored teenagers who spent too much time reading about haunted places online and trying to scare each other. We had a thing for old abandoned buildings, especially ones people said you shouldn't go near. One night, mid-July, probably 2005, me, Josh, and Trevor decided to check out Witch Road. Locals whispered about it, and supposedly there was some creepy cabin deep in the trees. Most of the time we did our research, found out what people claimed to see. This time we didn't. We just printed out some MapQuest directions and drove out after dinner. The road was maybe 40 minutes out from town. Some winding backcountry lane barely wide enough for 2 cars, all lined with thick trees. No streetlights, no houses, just endless forest and dirt shoulders. It was just after 8 p.m. when we parked. The sun was setting, but not quite dark yet. Kind of that weird time where the sky's purple, and you can still see, but just barely. I popped the trunk to grab our flashlights and a bottle of water. That's when I saw it. At the tree line maybe 50 yards out, there was this cabin, barely visible through the branches, half swallowed by overgrowth. It looked wrong somehow, like it had sunk into the ground over time or shifted sideways. I tapped Josh's arm and pointed. "That it?" "Guess so," he said, squinting. "Looks like a meth shack." But then we noticed something moving. It looked like a ball of light, white with a kind of bluish tinge, floating maybe 5 feet off the ground, gliding through the woods toward us. Not fast, just drifting. At first I thought it was someone with a flashlight or maybe headlights catching on something shiny, but no, it was smooth, quiet, and clearly glowing on its own. Trevor laughed under his breath. "What the hell is that?" I didn't answer. I wasn't scared. I felt calm, curious even, like I was watching something from a dream. The 3 of us started walking into the woods without talking about it, like we were being pulled in. I left my flashlight in the trunk, didn't even think about it. The woods were totally silent. No bugs, no wind, no rustling leaves, just the crunch of our shoes on dry pine needles. The light was ahead of us, weaving between the trees, always about the same distance away. I remember thinking, this is the part where something jumps out, but nothing did. Then we heard crashing, someone running through the woods fast, branches snapping underfoot. Out of nowhere, this guy burst through the brush, maybe 20 feet ahead. He was in old, tattered clothes, brown canvas pants, a long coat or cloak or something, and he held this flickering lantern, an actual lantern like the kind you'd see in a museum. Yellow light, real flame. He was yelling before we could say a word. "Get out of here, you shouldn't be here." We froze. His voice was loud, urgent, not angry, but not friendly either. He sounded panicked, terrified. Josh raised his hands. "We're just... Go!" the man shouted again. "Turn around, don't look back, don't say another word." His eyes locked onto mine like he was talking straight to me. I don't know why, but I listened. I turned and ran. So did Josh and Trevor. We didn't speak, we just tore through the trees, branches whipping our arms and faces. We stumbled back onto the gravel shoulder of the road, nearly ran into the car. I grabbed the handle with shaking hands. We jumped in, slammed the doors shut, and peeled out. No one said anything for a long time. We were 5 or 6 miles out before the silence broke. Trevor leaned forward from the back seat and said, real quiet, "Wait, did that guy have a fucking lantern?" Josh looked over at me. "Yeah, not a flashlight, a goddamn lantern." We drove the rest of the way home without speaking. We didn't talk about it for a while after that. Not because we were scared exactly, but because none of it made sense. The orb, the silence, that guy's clothes, the way he moved, the way he yelled at us, like he wasn't warning us about him, but about something else, something behind him. Later, I tried to figure out who he might have been. An old caretaker? Someone trying to scare kids off? But nothing fit. We went back online and finally looked up Witch Road properly. People had reported seeing floating lights in the woods, sometimes followed by strange figures. One post from 2003 said something about a man with a lantern who only shows up if you get too close to the cabin. We never went back. Not once. Years later, I was telling this story to a coworker, and he said, "You're lucky. There's legends like that all over. Some of them, the ones that call you into the woods, they don't always let you walk back out." I think about that a lot. We left our flashlights and packs behind. They're probably still there. I've never gone to check. Whatever that light was, I don't think it wanted to hurt us. I think it wanted to show us something. And that man, whoever or whatever he was, he didn't just appear out of nowhere. He came to stop us from seeing it. Story 10, I lived in a rundown apartment complex in Joliet, Illinois, just off Route 6. It wasn't the kind of place you bragged about living in. Railroad tracks ran behind the buildings, sirens were just part of the ambiance, and if you left anything valuable in your car, it wouldn't be there in the morning. But rent was cheap, and I didn't have much choice back then. I worked third shift stocking shelves at the local supermarket, and on my nights off, I'd stay up, drink a few beers, and sit out on the back stoop with my headphones in, facing the tracks. This one night, it was late July, 4:03 a.m. I remember because I looked at my phone just before it happened. I was out there alone. No wind, dead still, humid as hell. I had my earbuds in, listening to Pink Floyd, half buzzed, trying to cool off in the open air. I always sat facing the tracks, even though they were mostly hidden behind a row of tall, spindly trees. Trains didn't run that late, but I liked looking toward them anyway. Something about those tracks in the dark made everything feel like a limbo zone. The rest of the city asleep behind me, and just that stretch of iron and wood ahead. I had just cracked open my third beer when I saw movement. It wasn't a shadow or a flash of headlights or anything like that. It was something gold, bright gold. It appeared in the corner of my eye and didn't flicker or fade like a light would. I turned my head, expecting maybe a person with a flashlight walking near the tracks. But it wasn't that. There was a figure, tall, upright, walking slowly right along the middle rail. But it wasn't walking like a person. It didn't bob with each step. It glided, like its feet never touched the ground. And the entire body glowed this soft, golden light, like candlelight underwater. Not harsh, not blinding, just this steady golden hue, pulsing faintly. There were no features, No face, no clothes, no hair. It was humanoid but smooth all over, like it had been carved from light. I stared frozen, beer can still in my hand, music still going in my ears but completely forgotten. It didn't look at me. It didn't react at all. It just kept gliding along the track like it was following some invisible path only it could see. I only saw it for maybe 2 seconds. It passed between a gap in the trees, and then it disappeared behind the next cluster of trunks. I leaned forward, craning my neck, trying to track it, but it was just gone. No rustle of leaves, no fading light. Just gone. I tore my earbuds out and sat completely still, listening. No trains, no cars, no animals. Dead silent. I whispered to myself, "What the hell was that?" I sat there another 10 minutes, staring at the spot I'd seen it, heart going nuts in my chest. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I was drunker than I thought. Maybe someone had walked by with a lantern or a reflective vest. But I'd lived there almost a year. Nobody walked those tracks. Ever. Too many nails and loose gravel. And besides, there were no footsteps, no sound, and nobody glows like that. Eventually, I got up and walked closer to the tracks. I stayed behind the fence line, just squinting into the trees. Nothing. No signs of anything having passed through. Just that deep blackness between the trunks. Back inside, I sat on the couch, lights off, staring at the front door like something was going to knock. I didn't sleep. I didn't finish the beer. I didn't even take my shoes off. The weirdest part is, nothing else ever happened after that. I lived in that apartment 6 more months. I sat out there at night dozens of times, same spot, same angle. I never saw that thing again. I didn't tell anyone about it for a while. I tried describing it to my brother one night and he just laughed, said it was a dream or heat stroke. But I know what I saw. I wasn't tired, I wasn't hallucinating, and it wasn't a dream. There was a moment, just before I lost sight of it, where I swear it slowed down, like it knew I was watching, and it didn't care. I looked up similar sightings, thought maybe there were stories about spirits walking the tracks, or something like that. But everything was too vague or flat out fake. What I saw didn't match any ghost story or legend. It wasn't someone who died on the tracks. It wasn't an angel. It wasn't a damn alien either. It was just wrong. Something that shouldn't have been there. Moving through our world like it was on its way to somewhere else. Passing through. Not even looking down. And maybe the scariest part is that it wasn't scary while it was happening. It was calm. Peaceful even. But after, once it was gone, that's when the terror hit. The feeling that I had seen something I wasn't supposed to, that I'd caught a glimpse of something we're not built to understand. And maybe it saw me too, just didn't stop. That haunts me more than anything. I never saw it again.